Into episode 6, and this is where one of my favourite scenes comes in, where Freddie fires John Reid in his limo. Obviously this isn't what really happened because Queen and John Reid parted ways pretty amicably in the late 70s, so it's a bit of drama they've thrown in that didn't really happen, but again I think it's one of the great scenes in the film, so we bring it over to this. You then have the hot space era, the change in sound. You bring back that scene from the movie where they're recording a song. That was Another One Bites the Dust. You replace that with something else. Maybe a song like Body Language, which represents the change in sound, and you can show that over a montage of Freddie's partying getting out of hand and his club lifestyle leading him down some dark ways. After that you have the Hot Space album flopping and not really doing so well, or at least by Queen standards anyway. You have the press conference scene from the movie, which I love. And then we have some tension in the band, which had that through the Hot Space era. And then at the end of the episode, we can skip ahead to I Want to Break Free, the recording the music video, we saw that in the movie. Maybe add in how Freddie performed this song on stage. At the time, he would obviously, wear fake boobs and dress up like a woman on stage, and that was not well received by some people, well received by others, and I think you could tie that into Queen kind of losing the US audience at that time. I'm Mr. Bad Guy. Yes, I'm everybody's Mr. Bad Guy. Episode 7, and we have the band meeting to discuss their future, that scene from the movie. A lot of people, a lot of Queen fans didn't like this scene because they thought Queen never really broke up, which they didn't, but I think if you pay attention to the scene, it's not actually stated that they will break up, it's just more them taking a break for doing personal things. There's obviously a lot of tension and problems in the band because they're not happy about the money Freddie's receiving for his solo album. Again, people are critical. Brian and Roger did do solo albums before Freddie, but I think the drama and the tension in this scene comes more from Freddie getting a lot more money for his solo album than Queen did for any of theirs. And when you think they have to split that money 4 ways and he's getting that all on his own, that brings some real tension and some problems between members of the band. From here, Freddie goes solo and is partying and recording his album in Munich on his own with Paul Prenter. A few scenes I wanted to throw in here would be changing how Freddie meets Jim Hutton. Maybe to make it more similar to how it happened in real life, you could have Freddie bumping into Jim Hutton at a club, and because he's drunk and he's, clearly wasted and all that, Jim Hutton turns him down and isn't interested. Then you could also have Freddie bumping into an old friend who asks him if he's changed his behaviour in light of the new disease. This is obviously something that happened in real life, maybe not exactly, but this was him talking to an old music critic friend who asked him this question. And again, Freddie brushes it off as it's not a problem. As we know, this is the first sign of his carefree attitude and what would lead to problems and his eventual death later in life, so it's the first sign of that.
I said to him, have you modified your behavior in light of the new disease, which as of yet did not have a name? He said, darling, my attitude is, fuck it. I'm doing everything with everybody.
To go on with this, we have scenes from the movie where Freddie coughs up blood and it's the first sign that something could be wrong with him. The Mr. Bad Guy album flops, and as we know, there was a deleted scene where Freddie's walking down the street in Munich and he walks past the record store, sees the Mr. Bad Guy album next to a Queen Greatest Hits album, and this is when he's starting to realise maybe he's better off with Queen and he'd rather be working with them. To finish off this episode, we have the scene where Mary confronts Freddie in Munich and really is the one who gets through to him and wakes him up to what's going on. And from there, he fires Paul Prenter. We are the champions, my friend. Episode 8, I think, is the one you dedicate to Live Aid, still make it a big part of the story. You started off with Freddie and Jim Beach trying to get the band back together. A lot of people criticised this scene because they thought it was more Freddie begging the other guys. I don't see it as much as that as him apologising for what he needed to apologise for. So I think you keep that scene how it is and put it in the start of this episode. Maybe throw in a bit more about how Queen aren't as popular now in the lead up to Live Aid. It may make their triumph at Live Aid a bit better and a bit more celebrated because they thought they were done. You then go into the Live Aid rehearsal scene where Freddie struggles with his voice. In the movie they present this as maybe something to do with his AIDS, but I think continuing that storyline, it could be a good way to continue to touch upon his potential AIDS at this time. Someone asks him, could this be something worse, something more than what you think it is, and Freddie brushes it off as if to say, he's fine. But we as a viewer know there's something more going on. We then finish off this episode with the build up to Live Aid and the eventual full Live Aid performance. Obviously in the movie there were 2 songs, Crazy Little Thing Called Love and We Will Rock You, that were cut from the full performance, and Hammered 4 was edited down a bit, so bring those songs back because they were recorded and finish this episode off with the full Live Aid performance. Episode 9, and following their success at Live Aid, Queen are on a high again. They go into the studio, record One Vision, and it's some good times in the studio with them, with everything looking up again. I put in here another scene where, once again, Freddie bumps into Jim Hutton out somewhere, and this time he accepts because Freddie's got himself together and his life back together. This is kind of similar to how they portrayed in the movie. It's the same kind of idea, but it's just portrayed in a way that's a bit more closer to reality, while also making a bit more sense than what it made in the movie, which kind of just made it out as if Freddie desperately searched for this guy and discovered him a good 5 years after they had first met. From there we go into the Magic Tour. I thought it could be cool to recreate the Nebworth Park concert, as this was their final show with Freddie and it wasn't visually recorded. I thought rather than just focusing on one song, you could make a nice little montage or medley of a bunch of different songs they performed at that show and kind of have it be a culmination and a celebration of their live career, which did come to an end with that show. After the show, backstage, Freddie is exhausted and he kind of hints that maybe something could be worse than he thought. Maybe he could be a little bit ill. That combined with him seeing the AIDS story on TV, which he did in the movie, and then going for his AIDS diagnosis, which is the Who Wants to Live Forever scene, and his run-in with the AIDS patient, which is kind of a sad way to end off this episode. Episode 10, and I thought an interesting way to start this episode would be to talk about Freddie owing the record label a second solo album. In the movie it's kind of mentioned that he did sign a multi-album deal and all this kind of stuff, so I think you could touch upon that with this. At this point, Freddie would be very uninterested in doing any kind of solo work until he goes out to the opera one night and sees an opera singer by the name of Montserrat Caballé. This is similar to what happened in real life, maybe time shifted a little, but I think it works in this era. From here you have a very nervous Freddie meeting with Montserrat for the first time, and to his surprise she agrees to do an album with him. Then you can go into them working on that album, making that album, and really having this as the inspiration for Freddie to keep working as hard as he can and make as much music as he can until the day he dies. Freddie would then tell the band of his AIDS diagnosis, and much like he did in the film, would tell them, this is what it is, let's just move on and make some music. They record the Miracle album. I thought it could be a cool idea to have a montage put to the song Scandal that basically shows how the press hounded Freddie, to bring back that idea of Queen versus the press and their critics. And obviously at this time, Freddie's illness was starting to raise questions in the public, so to have the press constantly hounding him and show how they intruded on his privacy. To tie in with this whole press story idea, you could finish this episode with Paul Prenter selling out Freddie. Again, moved backwards from where it was in the movie a little bit, but I feel it works better in this part of the story. To start off this final episode, we've got Freddie and Queen at the Brit Awards, which is where Freddie made his last public appearance. People started to really notice how ill he looked and how unwell he was looking at the time, which started to cause some concern amongst friends. We can have the band recording the Innuendo album, which is showing how Freddie, despite he looks sick, he's continuing to work as hard as he can. A cool way of touching upon this idea would be to have Freddie looking worse and worse, but no one really addressing it in the actual story or in the actual episode. It's left to the viewer to see, wow, he looks a lot sicker and a lot worse than he previously did, but it's never really brought up and you don't focus on his suffering. From there, the Innuendo album comes out, it hits #1 and it's another success for Queen, but Queen go back into the studio and continue recording so Freddie can make as much music as he can. There's obviously the scene between Freddie and Brian when they're recording Mother Love and Freddie couldn't finish that song. That could be a touching scene to put there. Then to round it out, you've got These Are the Days of Our Lives, maybe the band recording the music video. Again, Freddie looks really sick at this point in time, and you kind of tie that in with Freddie's death and his funeral. You can then throw in a scene of Brian and Roger on TV to criticise the press and their treatment of Freddie as they did at the time.
Well, I mean, it's been quite distressing to read some of the reports in the press. One thing is that obviously nobody really knew him, but a lot of people sort of made out that they did. And it makes his friends, they all get very angry when they see the way that he's represented in the English press, especially the tabloid press. It's just so wrong. So they obviously made things up because they probably couldn't get inside. And for the last 18 months of his life, he was hounded by press outside his house.
You come on because you're angry, basically, not because you wanted to get up early and appear on breakfast television. You come on because you're angry, yeah? That's the main fuel,
because we're angry. We also want to explain, really, what we feel that we can do now with sort of Freddie's legacy in a way, you know. I tell you, we do feel absolutely bound to stick up for him because he can't stick up for himself anymore. So.
Then I've time shifted something a little bit here. I put that the band finished the Made in Heaven album, which is obviously a good couple of years, 2 or 3 years before it actually happened. but I thought it could be a cool way to touch upon them finishing the work they did with Freddie, because at the time, if we follow this timeline, this story ends with them at the tribute concert, and so otherwise we wouldn't get to touch upon the Made in Heaven album. So we time shift that a little bit, have them announce a tribute concert, and then finish up with a big number at the tribute concert. Who knows, this idea will probably never happen and it's all just a fantasy, something fun for us to do amongst fans, but you never know. You reach out to the right people. If you really like this idea, send it out to, I don't know, actors, anyone involved with the movie, Brian, Roger Taylor, these kind of people. Who knows, maybe it could happen one day. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Leave your thoughts down below. Remember to like the video, share it around, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure you hit that bell notification as well so you know when we upload. Until next time, guys, I guess I'll see you later.